Merry meet, Little Woman fans. In this episode, Christina and I will be discussing about the modern Little Woman adaptation from 2018. Comment shout-out goes to Musical Melody, who left this comment to my blog. I have been listening to your podcast since June, and I am starting to understand Little Woman a bit more than I did when I first started reading it. As much as I love Jo, she and Amy were really mean to each other. End quote. Christina and I will be chatting about this a lot more in this episode. This 2018 modern version is the only movie that is true to the book in terms of Amy burning Jo's manuscript. In the movies, it often comes from nowhere, or you just see Amy throwing a tantrum because Jo doesn't want her to come to the theater with Jo and Laurie and Meg and John. That happens in the book, but the way Jo bullies Amy, it starts way before that. Chapter after chapter, she corrects her speech, she minimizes her, she makes fun of Amy's interest, she calls her names. Someone recently asked me on my blog if May Alcott burned Louisa's manuscript. Truth is, I don't know. I did read from Susan Bailey's blog that there is no evidence of that. Susan Bailey is an Alcott schooler who runs the blog Louisa May Alcott is my passion. It is a great blog if you are interested in the real life of the Alcott sisters. I do remember reading a quote from Louisa that she and May were always in competition as children because they both enjoyed attention. Sadly, May Alcott received lots of hate mail from Jo and Laurie shippers and in general Amy haters. It was one of the reasons why she moved to Europe. She was quite tired of being villainized. Can you imagine moving to another continent because of a book your sister wrote? She mainly moved because she wanted to become an artist, but definitely Little Woman sort of casted a shadow between hers and Louisa's relationship. I have always liked Amy, and Amy is never a villain in the book. I think this movie is wonderful when it does show that it was Jo who really was being the bully. Burning the manuscript was not right, and Amy did recognize that, but it's not so simple as some of the adaptations want you to think. I also like that in this movie we see the sisters grow and starting to appreciate each other a lot more. I don't know if this one got a huge distribution in Europe, which is a shame. I remember I bought it as a DVD to myself when I was in the uni and I just fell in love with it. If you have not seen the 2018 Little Woman, it is really good and I highly recommend it. You can find episode transcripts of this podcast from my Gumroad page at littlewoman.gumroad.com. I have also added there some of my most popular Little Woman related articles if you would like to read them and get some to yourself. This is Little Woman Podcast, Anatomy of a Movie, Little Woman 2018.
Thinking about age, as far as I know, nobody has an issue with that in the 2018 film, the modern version. And it probably helps having Ian Bohen as Friedrich, the more conventionally handsome type. That was another one I was not expecting to like. I was hoping I'd like it as much as I do now because modern day adaptations, sometimes they are good and sometimes they don't translate well.
I agree, and I must say, my Jo and Friedrich shipping just went over the roof with this version.
And this one, I think, really translated well. Yes, oh my God, I was not expecting so much of it. Right at the bat, you sit there and you go, this version really loves Jo and Friedrich. We see Jo in New York. Was it Columbia? It was a college. It was not NUI. And then we see Jo having these flashbacks into her childhood. And I am comparing it to the 2019 one because this one actually did it better. It's very clear. This is the past, and how can we next see what happens in the present? And it doesn't try to make it seem like, oh, the past was so much better than the present. It is just Jo reflecting on certain changes that has happened. That one actually did it first, which was really nice. And again, even with the flashbacks, you were almost worried if it was going to be just the Jo show. But they managed to give proper highlight to each of the girls. I really liked the moment between Meg and John. Here, I think they properly translated the book stuff to modern day things. In the book, it is the Civil War era, and Mr. March goes out to be a pastor, chaplain, how everyone wants to call it for the army. And in this one, he is a soldier in Iran or Iraq. That was actually a good way to explain what would he be doing that makes him to be away and still be able to raise brave little women. There was a great scene I liked because it kind of reminded me of how I grew up. I wouldn't say that we were poor, but we were definitely not rich. I am the youngest of 4. I have 2 brothers. I don't have all sisters. I remember looking at it and being like, that is how we played games when they are doing Pilgrim's Progress. Don't touch the floor because it is dangerous. Marmee stopping the phone call, talking about money and paying off loan, and then playing with the girls, not letting them know that there was money struggles. I thought that was really nice and really realistic because, again, when I think back events in my childhood, I go, oh, yeah. My mom did do that. She admitted we were struggling, but we didn't want you guys to know. We were like, we would have helped, even thought we were at time 5 years old, something, still we would have helped. I liked that even though it was not a boarding house, Jo was going to college. Friedrich was a professor, though. In this one, he is Freddie. I wasn't sure how much I would like Freddie using the name itself, but I liked it. I thought it actually worked. And again, if you are like us, if you are a Jo and Friedrich shipper, this is the film for you. Not only there are a lot of great scenes between them, I think there is some of the best Jo and Friedrich screen chemistry ever.
I know there are people who don't like the setting in the book. They see it as Friedrich being a teacher and Jo as a student. But that is not really what it is. It is more about Friedrich being a mentor for Jo. Jo wants to become a better writer, and she seeks his help very actively, and he does encourage her. This version and also the 1994 film do that really well. Friedrich as a character is based on Goethe, who was Louisa May Alcott's favorite writer. It only makes sense that Fritz is this mentor figure for her, and also a love interest, because Friedrich is also based on a love interest. He's a mixture of these two, the love interest and the mentor.
I was going to say, technically, they don't go to a class together in the film. She presents her story for 4 or 5 other teachers, with Freddie among them, to try to get her book off the ground. I don't think he is actually her teacher because we don't really see them in a class. They are in a library or in the theater, I think, at one point in someone's apartment in some sort of cozy area.
I don't think he is her teacher. She presents her book to a group of people. I suppose they are writers and writing teachers, and he becomes her editor.
For anyone who goes, that's weird, that is not weird because they are not a student and a teacher. It is like you described it. He is her mentor and her editor. At one point, he says, I am your editor, not your therapist. For anyone who is freaked out about that or trying to tell you don't ship them because they are a student and a teacher, they are not that at all, and their scenes are great.
They are not really a student and a teacher in the book either. He gives her German lessons. She has agreed to help him with other stuff, small things. They have this mutual agreement, and the reason why Jo wants to take those German lessons is not because Jo desperately wants to study German. It is because Jo has a crush on him. I must say this is something that I realized later as an adult when I reread the book.
It is pretty clear that the filmmakers on this are full on into Jo and Friedrich. They really vamp up their scenes and their discussions on life and art. I remember one particular moment where Jo has a flashback talking to Friedrich. It goes directly to a scene with Laurie. I want to say that that particular moment is when they are at the theater and he is reciting a part and she looks at him and there is that moment, what is this feeling I'm having? Cutting Laurie trying to propose to Jo. I think that was a pretty good contrast. Jo sort of realizing she has feelings for Friedrich, but then also comparing it to a failed romantic relationship with Laurie trying to push it, and Jo saying, no, I don't.
This is the only version where I can 100% say that Jo thinks that Laurie is her brother. It is very much a brother and a sister relationship in this version. There is not added romantic moments between them. There is no kisses. There is not even long looks, which is a huge plus for this version.
Even when they first meet, it is not any typical teen movie where the couple meets and falls in love just like that. Here it is. Hey, you are awkward. I am awkward too. Let's be awkward together. I was sitting there and watching, and I was like, this is going to go well. They are not going to pull anything weird. They didn't go weird with Amy and Laurie either. I appreciated that as well. Out of all these 8 adaptations, only twice have they had 2 actresses to play Amy, technically 3. In this film, when we see the girls being little kids, Amy is younger. The other girls are like 8-year-olds and she is like 5. When we get to teenage years, we an actual 12-year-old girl. Amy technically has 3 actresses in this. I liked that there wasn't anything weird. Laurie's very nice to Amy. Oh, I like your paintings. We see Amy being like, he is so nice to me and I like him. It is all very sweet. Childish little crush. She likes to hang out with him because he is nice to her, but there isn't any weird creepiness. Why is this guy who is 15 years old being all cool and personal with a 12-year-old? I know some people are worried about that because there is a 3 or 4 years age difference between them, which is not a lot. When you put it in perspective where their ages fall, that can be weird, but when she is 21, he is 25, that is not weird at all. I appreciated that there was no creepiness from his part.
I love the girl who played the young Amy. I thought she was brilliant. Lucas Grabeel played Laurie. I think he falls into that fun-loving Laurie. One of the things that this adaptation does not have, and none of these adaptations have it, is Laurie's character arc. He doesn't do any work for Amy in this film either, but he doesn't do work for Amy in most other films either. That is a bit of a bummer, and it happens a lot with Laurie's character.
This film didn't have many Laurie and Amy scenes as adults. The moment when we see Laurie and Amy connect, we see Amy coming back from Europe. She and Laurie are having a moment, and Jo is like, what? Amy says, when we met again in Europe, we sort of caught up and liked each other a lot. I guess I'd rather have that than a full erasure. It is an upgrade from 49 version to where we don't get anything between them at all. At least we see longing looks between adult Amy and Laurie and the explanation. We did catch up in Europe and then seeing them afterwards being a couple. This one has something that is different in other versions. We actually have Amy being back from Europe before Beth dies because I just remembered Laurie is there comforting Amy when they are at Beth's funeral. That was different. I didn't mind it personally. I thought they actually managed to make it work.
I think I give a lot of liberties to this version because it is a modern day version. It doesn't bother me that much when it is set on modern day.
I remember someone asked me about how could the Marches not have Amy come back when Beth was sick. That was the mentality at the time. Don't come home because your sister is sick. You are poor. You cannot waste this opportunity to be in Europe. Whereas nowadays it is a little bit more easier. For me, I understood it because Beth was sick at that point. We see her in the breathing device. To me, it works in the modern day version, said because the mentality would have been different. And I think it helps to satisfy that feeling that Amy at least got to say goodbye to Beth. It doesn't always happen in real life. People don't get to say goodbye when they want to. It was nice that the family was together once again before Beth passed. I liked it. I didn't mind the change.
This is so far the only version where I felt sorry for Amy when she burned Jo's manuscript, because in this version it is shown very clearly that Jo bullies Amy for years and years and years before this incident happens. And then in Little Woman the novel, Jo bullies Amy for months and maybe years before the incident happens. We have talked about, 7-8 adaptations from 80 years time span. The only one that is true to the novel, when it comes to the manuscript, is actually the 2018 modern version. That's crazy.
Once they are younger playing that floor is lava game, Amy drops something, she goes to get it. Jo is like, she cannot come into the castle in the air. Meg is like, oh, let her, Jo goes. That is not fair. We made the rules to be this way. She already has that attitude. Amy cannot get away from things. They already build that attitude of antagonizing others. At least Jo feels that Amy's presence is antagonizing. She makes pretty mean comments about her, and I really felt that because I have had somewhat a similar comment said to me by an older sibling that made me feel very down. With this, you can really understand why Amy felt that way, because Jo really did hurt her feelings.
There was a scene in this movie where Jo locks Amy into a closet, or she closes the door when Amy tries to come in. It is one of those visual cues where you can see that Jo was not always that great. Sometimes I feel people try to frame Jo to be some kind of perfect goddess who they worship, goddess of tomboys. Jo is not written to be a perfect person. In the book, when Amy burns the manuscript and she falls into the ice, it is not the consequence of Amy's actions per se. It is a consequence of Jo's long-lasting jealousy towards Amy and the way Jo has treated her. It is a lesson that Jo needs to learn. That is the point of burning the manuscript. It is not because Amy is a bitch. It is because Jo reflected her own insecurities to her for years by being a mean bully. People don't like to talk about that. It is not in the movies except this one.
There's a small change too with the horseback riding. Nowadays we don't have that many natural lake ice rings. So that would be a problem in this Amy falls from the back of a horse. I like the horseback riding because it is legitimately scary. Someone falls, they can break their neck. They could die. I think that is another great transition to modern day. I liked that it was a legit scary moment. She is by the rocks and she falls and you hear a scary scream. At that moment, you feel Jo's actual anxiety and her fear. Oh my God, it is my fault. If something happens, it is my fault. I feel like that was one of the few times I was legitimately worried for Amy in that situation. Only other time when I felt that way was in the 94 version, because you hear Amy scream and then all of a sudden her head pops up. It is Jason in Friday the 13th. You go like, oh my God, it is not as scary as Friday the 13th, but it is scary in that sense. Oh my God, this little girl is going to drown. They really did a good translation with Meg as well. Instead of it being a coming out of party, it is a prom. That was very clever, I thought. That can be seen as a rite of passage. Most people would think, especially in a girl's life, that leads into a very nice scene between Meg and John, where he is waiting for her with food and asking, are you okay? And even though she throws up on his shoes, he is still, you are so pretty.
I love that scene. I really love John in this version. I think he was Laurie's coach or something.
Something like that. At the point when he is at the prom, I think he had just graduated. Meg is a senior and he has just graduated the year before. Maybe he was still Laurie's tutor. I really did like John in this. I liked their relationship and I liked his chemistry with Meg. I liked Meg defending John when she was getting married. Jo was first refusing to go to the wedding and she was like, this is my castle. My castle is to be with someone who I love and be happy. Deal with it, which I liked. I really thought that was, again, really putting Jo into her place, because what Jo wants isn't going to be the same what everybody wants. I liked that in the end, she did go to the wedding, no matter what her feelings are about growing up in marriage at that time. What would 16, 17-year-old feel? They change.
There was this great moment when Meg announced that she was going to get married, and Jo was like, you cannot get married. And then Beth says that you have to go to your sister's wedding, otherwise you will regret it. And I liked that because it showed that Beth is really the person who Jo listens.
And the way she goes about it with her nice Beth way, no matter what, we are a family. I know you, Jo. If you don't go, you will regret it. You are sitting here saying you won't, but you will. Years down the road. I did really like that there was that, again, feeling of family, that each of them are connected and talk to each other.
The girl who played Beth, Ali Jenkins, I think she's one of my favorite Beths. I think it really takes some strength to say that to your sister, who is this very bossy person.
Right. Especially when you yourself are a very timid person, too. I really liked their relationship. They had pretty good chemistry, too. She and Jo have a lot of conversations about illness and life and relationships. She is the one who Jo gets to confide to. If Beth had lived, she could have been a wonderful mother, at least a wonderful aunt, second mother, because she has a very caring nature and is the one person that Jo can be very vulnerable with. I think that is seen in this adaptation.
The feedback scene in this movie is not an argument. When Jo and Freddie/Friedrich kind of argue, it is not about her writing at all. It is about their relationship, which I thought was really interesting because she is kind of afraid of stepping into a relationship with him, and she is completely unaware how to act when you like somebody. I like that.
There's a line where she mentions how old she is, and she is older than other Joes in other adaptations. I think she is closer to my age, late 20s. Freddie says you need to write about what you know and who you are, and she is like, I'm 28 years old. I haven't had anything happen to me. I can understand how she would feel never having been in a relationship before, having her friend having a crush on her and her not feeling anything. She can handle that, but having actual feelings and not knowing what to do with it. I agree. I like that. The argument wasn't about the writing, but about their relationship, what it was or what it could be.
There was a moment in Christmas where they had this Christmas party, and he sent her a copy of Shakespeare's novel. That is what Friedrich does in the book. He gives Jo Shakespeare and other books. In this version, he sends Jo a copy of Shakespeare's book, and all the family members are like, oh, that is from your professor. They're all teasing her. She blushes, and then she goes somewhere private, and then she thinks what kind of message to send him, to thank him, and then she's like, delete, delete, delete. She was very confused what to do when someone you likes you back. Very relatable, I must say.
I remember that scene. They were like, oh, your professor is sending you gifts, and she is trying to tell them, no, we are just writer and editor, and Jo says something like, no matter how many drafts I send, he still reads them. Someone, I'm going to bet Amy, says, oh, he definitely has a crush on you if you bother him with your drafts and he still reads them and gives feedback. He clearly is more than just an editor. He clearly likes you. I like that moment. I thought that was really cute.
It is actually pretty close to the book because under the umbrella chapter, the entire family knows that Jo has a crush on Friedrich, but Jo doesn't seem to know that. It is so funny.
They just happen to be walking and then they run into each other and she is like, how nice to see you and how often he visits the house. And everybody is like, aha, when is it going to happen? Laurie and Amy actually have a conversation when is Friedrich going to pop the question and about the money. We will help with the money. It is very, like you said, true the book. Everybody knows except them. They're like, I know I love you, but I don't know. Do you like me? It is pretty adorable.
The 2018 does have some great scenes, like the discussion they have in the library. I think he has admiration for her, but he can't really put it into words yet.
He says, I want to know more about you. He is essentially saying, you are interesting, write about you. She says, I'm not interesting. And he looks at her like, I think you are. This film is so Jo and Friedrich heavy. Another change that I had no problem with. I thought I would have. Thanks to the way they executed it, we didn't get the under the umbrella scene. Literally, what we got was them in the attic, and I really liked that. I thought their scene in that was great. It is witty. to two of them circling around each other. She's like, my story was childish. He says, no, strange, funny, but heartwarming. Their usual banter type of thing, but it is still very heartfelt because she shows him the attic, which nobody except the sister share, and the two of them talking about Beth. He comes after she passes in them, admitting their love for each other. It is all so sweet. I was squealing. Oh my gosh. I liked that it ended with the wedding. We see her in a wedding dress, but it is one of those sort of like short dresses you can see Jo wearing in sneakers. That was so fitting for her. And I like that this film, out of any of them, I feel like is most Jo and Friedrich friendly and heavy.
Now I feel like I should invite the script writer here. We'll see. Definitely, if you are Jo and Friedrich shipper, this is a film for you. Welcome to the club.
A lot of these actors I didn't know. I knew Leah Thompson, obviously. For those who may not know, her most famous role was to be Lorraine in Back to the Future films. Fun fact, before they got Michael J. Fox, Eric Stoltz was going to play Marty McFly, but they didn't like how his interpretation was because he was taking it a little too seriously, and they got who they originally wanted, who was Michael J. Fox. I was watching series, movies that made us, that is how I found out about that. It would have been weird to sit there and go, at some point John would have made out with Marmee. I really like Leah Thompson, and she is on my top 3 of favorite Marmee versions because I like that because she has very good mother caring nature. I really like the scene between her and Jo after Beth dies. They are running together and she's like, I get it. I know how you feel. You cannot live in your misery. This is not what Beth wants. Very caring, but it also like, listen, you are not the only one suffering, Jo. This is not what Beth would have wanted. You have to somehow, she says in the nicest way possible, to get out of your funk. She's one of my favorites. And I liked that she didn't just go, Amy, you shouldn't have burned the book. She straps Jo and is like, Jo, just stop. She is not playing favors with anybody. In some feel that Marmee tears one sister against the other. I like that she is like, go to your corners and we figure this out rationally.
I knew Leah Thompson from Back to the Future and Lucas Grabeel from High School Musical. I have had people asking me why I don't post any more Jo and Freddy clips from this movie to my YouTube channel. And the truth is, I became fed up with all the Teen Wolf comments that I got.
Oh my God. I was going to say about Ian Bohen, I know he's in Yellowstone and my parents watch that, so you don't have that on you.
I don't know what it is about Ian Bohen. Yellowstone, Teen Wolf, all those fans come to comment. For crying out loud, people, I have a Little Woman channel. Talk about Little Woman, please. Talk about Jo and Freddy in this adaptation.
I want to take a moment to talk about how they did Beth's illness because they actually made it leukemia. Nowadays, scarlet fever, it is more treatable. It is not as deadly dangerous as back then. At least with this, it was kind of like, okay, this is deadly, but also a nice way to tie in why Jo cut her hair. In this, she is doing it in support for Beth rather than doing it for money. I liked the way they were able to translate those moments well, because sometimes I feel like some adaptations, they totally just kind of blow by it. They do it, and then it doesn't have the same impact as the time period would be, before they try to give it an explanation, but it is very weak. I have seen a lot of people talking about Cruel Intentions, which is a modern day version of Dangerous Liaisons. Catherine is trying to hide the fact that she is more false than she is, so people wouldn't judge her. Someone made an argument about it. It is not the strongest argument that this film could have of why she has to pretend to be so false to the world. Not to make her a hero, but she is not as villainous as she is in the actual Dangerous Liaison storyline, which is 18th century France. It can be hard sometimes when you are trying to interpretate things for modern day, but I always say this is why Little Women will endure, because in the heart of it all, it is a story about family it is about growing up, and that is always going to be relatable no matter what. At any point in history, we all have to deal with growing up, learning how to deal with these new feelings, adult feelings, getting your heart broken, learning to fall in love, chasing your dreams, all that stuff and everything else around it can be dealt with. For me, this ranks very high, and I have to push some of the adaptations down. I would put it either as number 1 or number 2. I really do love this one. Personally, I put it my number 1. I feel like overall story was executed well. The actors were great. How they managed to translate everything from page to screen, not even just with the sense of from past to present day, just in general, the essence of the story. I think they really executed it a lot better than some of the other version. Personally, for me, the 2018 modern day one is my number 1 and 94 is number 2. How do you feel?
It is going to be my number 2. I really like the faithfulness to the book, especially this one being a modern day version, and 1994 is my number 1.
So far, that is our only disagreement at the moment.
Great minds think alike.
I don't think much is going to change because we both know what is going to be the last on our list.
I hate to leave you all with a cliffhanger. That was the discussion between Christina and I about the 2019 modern day Little Woman. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you next time when we finally finish our list. Take care and make good choices. Bye.